साथ Parul Begum मौजूद हैं. She'll be talking to us about child protection and abuse, as well as domestic violence and its impact on children. And it's a very, very critical topic to discuss. You'll be alarmed when I'm going to be sharing the statistics with you shortly after I introduced our guest speaker. So Parul Begum is an entrepreneur, professional life and confidence coach, and a safeguarding trainer. She has over 10 years of experience in social care, managing vulnerable children and family services across UK. She is passionate about coaching, mentoring, and empowering individuals and young adults to reach their potential so that they can live a life on their own terms. So without further ado, let's welcome Sister Parul on board.
Assalamualaikum, Hina.
Walaikum assalam. How are you, sis?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, very well. Thank you for joining me today for the program.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's great to share some information with everyone.
Definitely. Pleasure is mine and pleasure is of my viewers as well, sis. So, sis, before we dive straight into our conversation and we start creating awareness around the topic, I just quickly like to share some stats before, just so that people, understand the direty of the topic and how bad things are getting. So, according to the crime survey for England and Wales, year ending March 2020, an estimation of 5.5% of adults aged between 16 to 74 years. So that makes 2.3 million people. Wow, that's huge. So 2.3 million people have experienced domestic abuse in the last year. The remaining 59% were recorded as domestic abuse related crimes. So what that means is 1 in 4 women are experiencing domestic violence in their lifetime. Subhanallah. Wow, very alarming statistics. And specifically during the lockdown, people have experienced a lot more domestic violence and DV related crimes. And it's not only limited to women, it's also basically, trickling down. The effect is trickling down on children as well, because everybody is cooped inside their homes. And if a couple, is bickering, arguing, and fighting and indulging in violent acts in front of the children do become the indirect recipients of it. This is the first question for you is, what are the possible reasons for perpetrators to abuse? What is their, what are they trying to achieve? What's running in their mind? Why do they abuse?
Well, there's a whole range of reason why perpetrator abuse. I mean, you could start with a small personality disorder. A small number of population have antisocial behavior, and they're disorientated, and as a result, they abuse their partner. They could have an abusive relationship with their family when they were a child. So it could be childhood trauma, childhood experience, and they see as a normal to abuse their partner. I mean, I'll give you an example. Working with one of the refuge, a child, actually a teenager, pushed their mom through, in a staircase because his dad did that. So even his mom and him was living in a refuge, he did that. He thought was normal. So that's sad how sad that could go to if a child witnessed. So they could be victim of domestic violence themselves and they become an abuser. Watching something that could be a game. There's loads of games children shouldn't play. Where men are dominator and abusing children. And women in the game, like sexual abuse and things happen during the game. A video game I'm talking about. Anger issue could be one of the issues, or they could have past issues, but they're taking the anger on their partners, their wife, their children. Or they could grow up in an addictive family, so it could be substance misuse went into the family, gambling issues, and it's not the issue of one community. Domestic violence happen in every society, every community, every range, whether they are financially well off or not, happens all over the society, every classes. And it could be different types of abuse. Also, they don't understand the boundaries, so they probably never had the boundaries set on, so they just think it's normal to abuse someone. Or they could be afraid, so they think inflicting someone, they're getting rid of their fear. lack of empathy. They probably never develop the empathy for anybody, so they just think it's
Right.
normal. They could, yeah.
Mm,
And also they could be a defensive, so they're probably doing something they think is defensive, defending themselves by, if somebody says something, they think lashing out, whether verbally or physically, is normal. So this is just
yeah.
some example I've given. There could be whole range, but none of the example I've said is accepted. You might have lots of issues, lots of things, but that doesn't mean you have to hurt someone, whether that is
Mm,
physically, verbally, emotionally, sexually. You have no right to abuse somebody else.
yeah,
And as a
absolutely.
woman or as a victim, you shouldn't be taking all this. You should seek help.
Mm. But majority of the times, they specifically, I'll talk about, coming from an Asian background, that,
Yeah.
and you'll be better able to relate with it, that many situations that do fall under the category of domestic violence and abuse, we're basically conditioned not to take them as DV, and we're made to believe that, if your husband pushes you or nudges you or talks to you, not in a gentle way, but shouts at you and constantly tries to demean you and gaslight you, then you should just accept it, because maybe he's had a, long day at work and he's tired. So we're made to believe basically that whatever wrong that he's doing is actually not wrong, just because he brings the bread on the table, so he has the right to do so. What do you have to
Bringing
say
a
about
bread,
that?
no, that's absolutely wrong. Whether you are Muslim, Hindu, Christian, doesn't matter. Sometimes family bring religion onto it and also culture onto it, saying, oh, he brings the bread. Whether he brings the bread in the table does not give him the right to harm you. Yeah, you have a long day at work. Come and talk to your wife, talk to your partner. Doesn't mean you're gonna lash out verbally or emotionally or physically. And women shouldn't be listening to, because their mother suffered or their grandmother suffered doesn't mean they have to suffer it. Yeah, olden days people probably didn't have the support. They thought it's norm. It's not normal to be taking the beating, or whether it's physical beating or emotional. And men don't have the right to do so. And I think us in this society, we need to raise more awareness, also giving the confidence to the women. I think lots of time women don't shout out because that's how they've been conditioned. They've been
Yeah,
conditioned saying, okay, your life is housewife. You should, even if they're working, your life is to look after your husband and your children. And you don't,
yeah,
whatever a husband says, you should follow it. But doesn't mean, if we're talking about Islam even doesn't say you go and beat up your wife. Islam gives more respect than any other religion. But is those sadistic men use religion, culture to abuse women?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So these are the different dynamics, of a perpetrator's, way of abusing a woman. But then at
Yeah.
the end of the day, when they're doing this, what is their bone of contention? What are they trying to achieve from it? One thing that you covered was that perhaps it's their defense mechanism. What else? What's their bone
Well,
of
it's the
contention?
control, it's coercive control. They want to keep a control. They think by lashing out, shouting, physically being violent, they are control of the situation. That's how they feel, is keeping the control in their hand, and they feel that's the only way they can control it. Also, a lot of people who got narcissist behavior, they feel a pleasure or satisfaction by controlling others. They think, I'm in control, nobody can do anything, and it's because maybe they had a past experience, so they don't want to let go of the control. Even I've seen men, if their wives kind of put a bit of makeup on or dress up, they get very jealous. They think other men gonna look at the woman. And I've seen
Mm,
so many cases, and deal with so many cases when women were not allowed to dress themselves up
mm,
because their husband
mm,
feels so possessive, because they think is
mm,
their,
mm,
it's like their property. They treat women like their property. You do what I say. You follow my order. So he's having the full control, and I think the control is the biggest issue in here.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with you, sis. Yeah, coercive control is very, very, strongly embedded in their ways. Sis, would you like to explain the terminology gaslighting a bit more for our viewers?
Before I explain the terminology, I think it's important to understand the types of abuse as well. Yeah, and I mean there's a whole range of abuse, and some of the abuse actually comes in top, like physical abuse, which is physical beating. Obviously people understand, and I think that's where people get confused a lot of time about physical, uh, they think domestic abuse is physical violence. Actually it's not physical violence. Physical violence one of the term, but emotional and psychological, that's really huge, and that's something I've seen huge increase during the lockdown. I mean, I've been coaching a lot of women. Emotional and psychological abuse is huge. Sexual abuse, every woman have right to say no, but that's something people bring religion into. Oh, I'm your husband, I can do anything, anytime. And that's not in just religion, but also in non-religious way. I've seen women's been sexually abused in front of their children, and that's something I've dealt with lots of traumatic children watching that. Economical abuse, a lot of women I've seen also who relies on husband's income. They feel they can't get out of the situation because he provides all the financial support, bring food in the table and provide for the children. And that's something I've also seen used in by in-laws as well, saying, oh, you can't leave him because he provide the bread, and you can lose the children because you don't have any income. And a lot of time I've seen women they have supported, actually, especially some of the women who came here from back home, married in this country. They've been misused by saying, if you leave him, you're going to lose your children because you don't have an income. That's absolutely not true. And women believe in because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the awareness, so they get scared. They stay in the relationship because of finances. They think they're going to lose their children. Technological, men sometimes start suspecting their wife, or and putting bugs on their phones and internet so they can watch what's going on. But also that could include also partners. Uh, they're asking them to reveal in there and then use that to blackmail the partner if they're in a relationship, threatening them, oh, I'm going to show this to your parents or somebody else. So technology is another biggest part in this relationship. And you're talking about gaslighting. Obviously, the behavior. The whole gaslighting come with the behavior of control. And again, being into narcissist behavior in here, the whole situation is control, because they want to be in control of the situation. So they're doing everything in their side to keep control of their partner or their wife.
So since I'm just trying to understand, okay, we understand that this is their bone of contention. That's what they're trying to achieve. They feel safe by having everything under their control. But what is their state of mind? What is their mindset? Why do they try to satisfy themselves or defend themselves by controlling others? Is it that something has happened with them on a personal level in the past? I understand we covered talking about perhaps they've been exposed to domestic violence in their own homes. Maybe they've seen their fathers, behaving abusively towards their mums. But is it something more than that? So, them repeating the vicious cycle, repeating the same experiences that they went through when they were young,
Yeah,
watching their
yeah, and
moms getting abused? Yeah.
I think, as I mentioned, it could start with personality disorder, for example. From very young age, they could have a personality disorder, which then lead to they don't have the empathy. They see things differently, so therefore they feel like doing things is okay. So they feel, and past experience of observing is somebody doing it, whether their father or their grandfather, they're observing the situation. Watching on TV, nowadays everything on TV and game, there's so many abusive films and video game you can watch, and people get sometimes really fascinated with those as well. um, and some people have real anger issue, and anger issue could come from childhood, but sometimes also could be a personality disorder, and they can control the anger. And anger comes on different form, not just hitting the partner, but also throwing things in front of the children, in front of their partner, breaking things. And I've seen so many occasions, thing gets smashed, TV items and everything, because they can't control the anger. Also could be from addiction. So I mean, what some of the women that worked with seen, actually very well educated men, they go into parties and things, high society, start taking cocaine, high class drugs, then they get disorientated and they become abuser as well. So it's not just having past experience. People could be becoming abuser in middle of their midlife, like middle of their age, because they start mixing with wrong crowd. Gambling, another issue. Sometimes they could be doing betting just for a fun. That could become an addiction. Then you could see they end up selling their wives' jewelries, household items, loads of things, and then the whole anger issue comes and taken by the woman. So it could happen any time of their life, not necessarily just childhood experience, but